People do not like change. You get used to some things that when you discover there's been a shift and you had no say in it, well, that's quite hard. You feel weird, you feel uncomfortable, and almost like you have to start again. Deep down, we are creatures of habit. This is why when you've seen someone use a certain move as a finisher for 67,567 years, and then all of a sudden they want to get a new one over, it's quite difficult. What is this confangled new maneuver, and who is this guy for trying to get me to care about it? I was more than happy with
the tombstone.
And now it's dead. Preposterous. Probably better to just accept it, but whatever. I'm Simon from What Culture. Remember to hit that subscribe button, and this is 10 WWE superstars who gambled on a brand new finisher. Number 10, John Cena. Cena got away with this as he wasn't really back long enough for it to be a proper thing, but teasing that he did have a new big move that he was going to unleash did get people interested. Then when it turned out to be the Lightning Fist, there was an air of disappointment. More comedy than serious, John literally just started to twonk people in the face. It was hard to buy, as you see around about 45,567 strikes a match, but that was the point. This was more of a joke instead of groundbreaking. This got underlined further when Chris Jericho did a better job with his Judas elbow, which fell into the same category, and given that Cena is pretty much gone these days, it doesn't really matter. It's also smart. Why smash yourself around when there's no need anymore? It only takes a conversation with Hulk Hogan's back about the leg drop to figure that one out. If only he had just decided to hook somebody in the nose. Who knows if we'll ever see John's big new move again. He's making waves on the big screen, and more power to him. Number 9, Dolph Ziggler. I'm not even sure if I know what Dolph Ziggler's finish is these days. It changes like the wind, and besides, he never wins anyway, so it doesn't count as a finisher. In 2011 though, things were different, and amazingly, Dolph attempted to get a sleeper over as the most devastating weapon in his arsenal. Contrasting it to his crazy bumping style, it was a case of using the past to shape the future and utilizing a submission move as almost a wink and a nod to those who came before. The problem was no main star agreed to lose to it because they thought it looked stupid, meaning the only wrestlers that did were mid-card fodder, and that wasn't going to serve Dolph's plan. He tried in vain, but it was soon clear it was a waste of time. It was ditched, and back to that zigzag we went. Number 8, The Big Show. For most of his career, The Big Show relied on the chokeslam to win matches because of course he did. A staple of any giant, it was easy to do, and it looks awesome when your opponent gets some serious height. If you want to look dominant, these are the boxes you seek to tick. Then he fought a boxer in 2008, and all of a sudden he was using the power of the bunch. Brought in for his WrestleMania 24 match against Floyd Mayweather so that Show could act like he was capable of knocking the champ out, it came into effect in March of that year when Chris Jericho sold it like his jaw had exploded. It wasn't just for laughs though. Big Show even destroyed The Undertaker with his new blow, which raised the eyebrow of many fans. We weren't mucking around. He's never really gone back to the chokeslam either, instead deciding to stick with this hammer which has served him well enough. Let's be honest, if someone who is 7 feet tall did punch you in the face, you'd likely fall over. Number 7, Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's always funny to think that when Steve Austin walked into the WWE after a damn good ECW stint, he was given the ringmaster gimmick. He was also put with Ted DiBiase, and it was that which shaped his whole character. He was a $1 million champion, part of a $1 million corporation, and used the $1 million dream as his finisher. How could he do anything else? Even in 1996, that approach was seen as old hat, and it's telling that 6 months after his debut, and that DiBiase suddenly left, that Austin began to use the stunner. That tied into the Rattlesnakes King of the Ring win, and as we know, we were then off to the races. I'm not 100% sure that we'd have gotten the same boom if Steve had just carried on choking people out. The immediacy of dropping someone's jaw onto his shoulder became a visuals fans were desperate to see week in, week out, and from there, he became one of the most successful professional wrestlers in history. The end. Number 6, Chris Jericho. It's not surprising at all that Chris Jericho would be on this list, because who is better at smelling the winds of change and listening to them? The answer is no one. Constantly reinventing himself and staying ahead of the curve, this was true for his moveset as well, which is what we saw in 2007. Returning to the WWE after a hiatus, Jericho marched back into action with his new codebreaker finish that could be hit out of nowhere, and even used that as a catalyst to switch up his whole persona. The old Y2J was gone, and we had visual cues that represented that. You know it worked too, as it remains one of his calling cards, as do the Walls of Jericho and Lion Salt. Talking about taking the right steps forward without just burying your past. There's an argument right now that Chris has the best character in all of wrestling, and it may very well be because of the decisions he made in the process. Smart man. Now here's an advert from TrueCar. Number 5, Dean Ambrose. When Jon Moxley was reborn in New Japan, he made one very quick decision, which was his finish. Ensuring that opponent Juice Robinson kicked out of his old Dirty Deeds move, Moxley debuted a far more devastating version when he hooked his rival up into the air and dropped him on his head. It was almost like the shackles of WWE were gone and he could do whatever he wanted. There is more proof to this too, because we had been in this position before. If you load up the WWE network and seek out early Ambrose matches, you will see that the original version was more of a reverse DDT that got changed when the powers that be said it was too dangerous. He was asked to tone it down. Bringing in the Death Rider or paradigm shift was something he had to do though, given that he was going through a rebirth of sorts. This was Moxley doing things his own way, which included how he beat his enemies. Also, it does look better. I don't think we can dispute it. Number 4, Seth Rollins. 2016 was a tough year for Seth Rollins after he was told he couldn't curb stomp people's heads into the floor anymore. When read like that, you can see why this happened. Management was terrified kids would copy this in the playground, so it was stopped in its tracks. It was a shame as it helped the Rollins character no end, and once again had that magic that it could be hit from nothing. You never saw it coming. The first replacement was the pedigree, given that he was feuding with Triple H. It made sense on paper, but it was so synonymous with the game that no one accepted it from somebody else, and all it did was remind you that Triple H was probably sniffing around somewhere. Attempt 2 was a knee to the face, but once more, it didn't connect, and no, that's not a pun. For one, it didn't have a name for ages, and when it was finally dubbed the Ripcord Knee, it was met with apathy. That doesn't sound very cool. Eventually, we just went back to the stomp because everybody realized that it had something to it, and that's now been run into the ground because everybody and their dog has kicked out of it. I think I kicked out of it in my sleep last night. Means you can't really call it a finish because it rarely finishes anyone. Number 3, Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan is smart. Clearly at some point deciding he was going to change his finish, he waited until the biggest point of his career to date to debut it. Now we're talking. Coming at SummerSlam 2013 when he was facing John Cena for the WWE title, Bryan ran at his foe and kneed him right in the face before pinning him for the win. It was easy to get over because once again it was throwing your knee into somebody's face, and the fact that it not only beat Cena but won him the belt meant it was now easy to believe it was over from that second. This kind of impact move was one of the things he didn't have as well, so bringing it in was just completing the package. He was going to have to fight the Authority after this, so having a quick maneuver to dispose of them was needed, and it's not like he left the yes lock behind entirely. Months later he was winning gold again using that very submission, and Bryan was simply ensuring he had no holes in his moveset. Probably does have some holes in those jumpers he wears though. Number 2, The Undertaker. It was always going to be important to evolve the Undertaker character over the years to ensure it didn't run out of steam, and it's the reason Mark Calloway has been as successful as he had. He knew how and when to do this. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I wasn't particularly enamored with his switch to the American Badass, but I get to fans who were getting into wrestling at that time that he did come across as some cool motorbike guy. What did not was when he introduced the Takin Care of Business submission. He did this to try and get over as a heel in 2001, which was always going to be a struggle because everybody loves the dead man. When you are taking out beloved faces such as RVD, The Rock and even Jim Ross by choking them out, however, you've probably got a better chance of achieving this. So fair play to the Phenom for committing to this in the way that he did. That one didn't fly, but even today he has made a move like this work. As well as the Tombstone, it's not uncommon to see Taker choke people out with Hell's Gate, a move that's directly tied into his love of MMA. Much like his character, Undertaker has always tried to bring something new to his presentation. Number 1, Mankind. In 1998, Mick Foley risked his life to become a bigger star than he ever had been. And somehow he topped this simply by putting a sock on his hand and ramming it down other people's throat. That is wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. Foley himself has often said he wished he thought of this sooner, but really without these death-defying stunts, he may not have built up the sympathy in the way that he did. By the time he did introduce Mr. Socko, we loved Mick so much, he could have gone and done anything he wanted. Based on the mandible claw, which he had been using for years, it soon became true that it wasn't the move fans were looking forward to. It was Foley sticking his hands in his pants and pulling out clothing that was meant to be worn on his feet. Before long, it was clear the more he moved away from the original idea of Mankind, the more success he was going to get. Boy howdy, Did this prove it? Know of any other superstars who gambled on a brand new finisher? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from What Culture, and I will talk to you again very soon, or when you click another video and happen to hear my voice.